Well, blessed Thursday to you as we come with your daily encouragement. And we are still in the book of Revelation. We're in Revelation chapter 15. And we are in that movement towards heaven before the final, or at least in the book of Revelation's description, the final wrath of God. There have been three waves of this: first seals, then trumpets, and now we'll see some bowls, seven, all of them. And of course, it moves into progression. First, it was a quarter, then a third, and then a half of the earth that will be consumed. But there will be a remnant remaining in the population and on the earth, for a new heaven and a new earth will be established. So let's look at Revelation chapter 15, beginning with verse 5. After this, which was the great multitude singing in heaven, we went through that yesterday. After this, I looked, and the temple of the tent of witness in heaven was opened. So, what is the temple of the tent of witness? Well, it is basically a tabernacle, very similar to the tabernacle in Exodus. It was a tent. And in that was a place where the witness or the message of God is present. And out of the temple came seven angels. We've seen this before. With seven plagues, robed with pure bright linen, with a golden sash across their chests. Then one of the four living creatures gave the seven angels seven golden bowls full of the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. And the temple was filled with the smoke from the glory of God and from the power, and no one could enter the temple until the seven plagues of the seven angels had ended. Now, in our reasoning with numbers, with all the numbers in the book of Revelation, 7 is the number of perfection. So we have the completion of it. And we have 7 times 3. And that's another number of completion, or a holy number. Not unlike the Trinity, or even the reality of past, present, and future. There's a lot of threes going on. So when we have that combined with the 7, we are reminded of the completeness of this act. No one was allowed in the temple until this had been completed. In other words, it has the most priority at the present moment that John is describing it. Now, when we think of plagues, we also need to think of the plagues of the people of Israel during the time of the Exodus. Now remember, there were more plagues in that numbering counter, but we should remind ourselves that we're not so much thinking about the number as what is being done. God is acting, and God is acting decisively. I forgot about another 3. We had, remember, 3 seals that opened up the words of God to enact these things. And after the 7th seal was released, there were 7 trumpets announcing, and then we had this interlude of heaven and the judgment of heaven, and now we are at the 7 bowls of wrath. So get those images in your mind as you hear this, because what is progressing here is the completion of God's judgment. Now, with that in mind, we need to ask the question, what does this mean? Good Lutheran question we have in our catechism. Well, let's look at it slowly. After this, which was the praising in heaven, which seems to be the normal thing that happens, and it happens around the tent of witness, the holy of holies of heaven that is revealed, there's a witness, and it is open that there is a wrath coming upon the earth. The completion of God's punishment, or should I say, God's starting over again. And this is a pattern that is quite common, whether it be the floods of the Egyptian armies in the Exodus, or whether it be the floods that Noah and his family was rescued from in Genesis chapter 7. All of these are reminders that God has a loving side. He has protected a remnant. He has given the earth all the opportunities to turn and repent. But God also wants justice. And the reason for the punishment is not because God has bloodlust of some sort and wants to get even with people. No, God's passion, if we remember back to the temple, underneath the temple, were the souls of those who had been persecuted here on earth. And they ask, "How long, O Lord, will you ignore our justice? How long, O Lord, will you ignore the punishment that these people who have attacked us rightly deserved? How long, O Lord?" Well, what we have here in chapter 15 is the completion of that, or at least the announcement of that final act of God's bowl of wrath. And I think that that is the safest interpretation, because then we start going into a lot of speculation. When will this happen? Well, it happens in chapter 15. How does that relate to a timeline? Well, as I've said from the very beginning, that's the biggest discussion in the book of Revelation. Do each of these chapters represent a timeline? Or do each of these chapters represent, like a cube, another way of looking at the same reality? And it's taken a while, but I have come to that latter conclusion. These are vast descriptions, different ways to view God's act of mercy and God's act of justice. God's act of worship in heaven and God's worship, the worship of the people of God on earth. And so these are another vision of what that judgment looks like. But there is progression. You can't deny chronology either. First it's a quarter, then it's a third, and then it's a half of the world. We'll see that. And there's a progression in the book. 7 3 times, and other things of that nature. So there's always going to be an interesting portrait. And that's probably the best thing we can look at, like looking at a intricate painting that God is presenting to us. An intricate painting of what both God's love and God's justice look like. And if I may simplify it to the best of my ability, I would say, look at the explanations for Luther in the Ten Commandments, where we have those infamous words that maybe struck us as odd when we first memorized it, where we are to fear and love God. Fear the wrath of God, but trust in the eternal love of God. God bless you today. We trust that these are words of encouragement for you today. Keep on reading, and let's figure out what God may be saying to us in the book of Revelation. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.